Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for coming to the first ever Life After LCS event here at Lake Country. And I'm really excited for this event to happen. I'm really very grateful for the alum to come back and speak to us tonight about their experiences here and what it's meant for them. And I am an alum of Lake Country School, but I didn't make the cut for this event. Anyway, we are really incredibly grateful for them taking time out of their schedules and out of their lives to come and talk with us. Sarah Richardson is going to facilitate the conversation, and we have a number of kind of prepared questions, but there will be time, probably about 15 minutes or so, 10-15 minutes at the end for you to ask questions also, so please keep those in mind as we kind of go through. We're going to start with introductions. They're just going to share name, pronouns if they wish, high school, college, and then what they're doing now, and what their work is now. Now, we have just people who are here as who are seniors at high school or in college, so that's going to be answers a little different, of course, for them. But we'll just start here and take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Solenne. I use she, her pronouns, and I graduated from Lake Country in 2018. I went to Southwest High School for 4 years, and I've been at UC Berkeley for 2.5 years. I'm a current junior there.
Hello, my name is Yvonne P. I graduated in 2005 from Lake Country. I went to South High School, and then I went to the University of Texas in Austin. And then I worked in software for a while in Minneapolis, and then I moved to New York, and I've been modeling now for like a decade. Yeah.
My name's Adam Witherspoon. I graduated in 2007. I spent time at Benel Margaret and Thomas Jefferson and University of River Falls and a slew of other colleges. There's a theme. And I work in hospitality now, food and wine consultant, wine peddler, anything glutton related.
I'm Caroline. I use she, her pronouns. I graduated Lake Country in 2021, and I'm at De La Salle High School right now.
My name's Gus. I go to Southwest High School. I also graduated in 2021.
I'm Hallie Wallace. I graduated in 2005 with Yvonne. And also went to South High with Yvonne. And I went to the University of Minnesota. After that, I'm now a union organizer in the healthcare industry. I saw your shirt. So yeah, I'm a union organizer. I primarily work with healthcare workers at Mayo Clinic right now. I negotiate contracts and all that stuff. So.
I'm Raven. I use she, her pronouns. I graduated in 2011. I went to Southwest High School. I went to St. Catherine University for undergrad and MCAD for graduate degree. That's it.
What are you doing now?
Oh, I work in marketing, so I'm an email marketer at Blue Dot, which is a furniture company here in Minneapolis, and I also teach horseback riding lessons on the side.
I'm Ben Tanner, use he, him pronouns, graduated in 2014, went to Southwest High School, went to Whitman College, and now I'm kind of transitioning into a career, hopefully in soil science, something in that realm, but I'm currently working at a ski shop.
I'm Lucia P. I use she, her pronouns. I graduated from Lake Country in 2012. I was here for 3 years. And I currently live in Minneapolis. I went to Southwest High School and then the University of Vermont in Burlington. And I work in collective land access organizing. So I work with emerging farmers and helping people access farmland.
Thank you. This is really exciting for me because every single one of these wonderful people was a student of mine. I used to teach music and drama here, so I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to throw out questions, and if you want to answer, will you just raise your hand? We'll just popcorn. We're not going to go down the row or anything like that. So could you please share a fond memory of LCS, something that you look back on, remember, anything you'd like to share?
I'll start. There are truly so many, it's truly impossible to choose which one. But some of my fondest memories were on the Odyssey in junior highs, being able to do the Odyssey with you're starting out a new school year with a group of people that you knew some of and maybe didn't know others, and having that bonding experience at the beginning of the year really laid the foundation for an awesome year of friendships with people that you might not have otherwise thought that you were going to have a connection with, or they'd been in different classrooms in E2 or E1, and so it was an incredible experience. I can't point out which Odyssey was better. They were different in really incredible ways, but yeah, that whole experience was like, when I tell people about that, they go, huh, that's the most incredible thing that anyone has ever heard when I tell them about it.
I think spending time at the land school, Odyssey as well, I think Odyssey South, doing some runs along the beach there early in the morning, watching the sunrise. I think generally like having freedom and responsibility given to me, like at the land school, being able to go on some walks by myself, go to the barn, that kind of thing, like allowing freedom to develop, responsibility to develop at a young age was really impactful, and has helped, I think, even now for me.
My Odyssey South, my 7th grade year, was really tumultuous and exciting and crazy. We had our campground flooded several nights in a row, and we had to make a couple last-minute decisions about where we were going to sleep because we couldn't sleep in 6 inches of water, and we ended up sleeping on the ground inside of a museum, the Trail of Tears Museum, and that was such an exciting night for me, and I think for all of my peers. It was I don't know, it felt so special to be in this group of people and trying to figure out what to do and all these solutions, and it made us feel like we were like the adults too, because everyone was kind of scrambling, and it was this really beautiful moment where obviously we knew everything was going to be okay, nothing bad was going to happen, but it was just such an exciting time, and we all slept in the museum. And it was this incredible experience. I remember having my head under a desk, and and it was just everyone from my year and the year above, we talk about it all the time still. The people I'm still friends with were always oh, remember that one night? That was so much fun. That's a story I'm gonna remember forever.
I feel like the problem solving that you described is something that we all experienced with our crew of people that we came through the school with. And I think it's something that is very different here than a lot of adults that I know who went to different schools, not Montessori schools, is you always felt like you were a part of what was happening, right? Everything flooded and the teachers didn't just say oh, we're gonna go figure this out, everybody sit down and be quiet. It was more let's all freak out together and try to figure out what we should do, which is so much more fun as a kid. You feel like you're having ideas and they're bad ideas, or you're having ideas and they're really good ones. I feel for me, all the travel sent me off into the world, feeling I could kind of go anywhere and do anything. And I think a lot of people don't get that when they're really young, so that's my favorite thing, is all the trips, all the camping, living at the land school for 6 weeks, that's the thing where people are what are you talking about? You lived on a farm for 6 weeks without your parents, and it was your school? It's yeah, we had the best time. Hallie was the first one ever to go out there, and I went shortly after her. And I mean, that informed my life. I want to buy a farm. That's the plan, is to have something similar to the land school in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also going to say the land school too. Like Yvonne said, I was on the very first farm stay, and I think they're shorter now. They're not 6 weeks, and there are probably a lot of yes, there are probably a lot of things about the land school that are different now because of us on that first one. But yeah, no, and kind of what you were saying, Ben, about the freedom that was given, and some of my best memories of Lake Country were in junior high on that farm stay. I'm still close with all of the people who I was on it with. I was literally on a group chat with all of them talking about doing this. And they said to talk about the time we all ran into the cornfield at night. And just, we probably weren't supposed to, but we did, and there was a trust in us, and we all came back. But it was this very we were like Erdkinder, the like Montessori principle of Erdkinder, and like really embodying that so fully was really cool. And so that sticks with me. I know that sticks with my friends, and we still talk about it. And then once in junior high too, I did an exchange program to France, to a Montessori school in France, and went there. And then a girl from there came and stayed with me and came to Lake Country. And so that was a really cool opportunity for me to both be able to go to another country, but then also experience Montessori in another culture. It was really cool.
You're lucky you did France. We did Mexico, and we were like scrambling to learn Spanish.
Oh, yeah.
The 2 weeks before, but a similar wonderful experience.
Yeah.
This isn't a particular memory, and I know this isn't going to sound good, but it is good. But when I look back at my time, I just remember feeling uncomfortable a lot. And whether you know it or not, when you sign up for Lake Country, you're signing up for a culture of participation. You are forced to do everything, whether you feel good about it in the moment or not. You had to do the plays, you had to go on the bike trip, you had to spend 6 weeks at the land school. I remember turning 13 at the land school, feeling so alone and having to learn self-reliance for the first time. And there was always a safety net. I was never actually alone, but there's every corner I turned, there was always an avenue to push myself a little further, and that's always been baked in here. So yeah, it's everything. It's not a particular memory, really.
Oh yeah, sorry. I wanted to add on to that. I'm sure this is gonna come up in later questions, but I feel like all of my memories, there's this common thread that was I learned how to adapt, and adaptability was a really important part of my experience here. I was only here for 3 years, but I was more equipped transitioning into college and learning to that's how I felt personally compared to other people at my school. I felt in the years that followed my graduation from Lake Country, I was naturally confronted with all sorts of new experiences, and I also went to school in France, but I went in high school, and I went to college across the country, and I went from Lake Country to a bigger public school, and it was just I felt like I could adapt to new environments because I had learned how to before, and I knew it was okay because I had experiences where I had felt like I was adapting to strange environments, whether being in the museum or being on the farm by yourself and you don't really know anyone yet, and I still had that community for me, I guess. So
I remember on our Odyssey South, kind of building off what you were saying about adaptability, we went on a boat, and I did not like boats. I was very scared of boats, but we were going on a boat, and we went with the Shark Research Center at a university down in Louisiana, and we went out to catch sharks to tag them, to then go watch where they traveled and their migratory patterns. And I remember there was one, and we reeled in this shark, and it's probably 2 or 3 feet wide, not wide, long, and whoa, and they were this is a special shark, and there's this guy at the university who's studying it. And so they assigned me and this other kid to sit on a cooler, and they put the shark in the cooler to kill it so that he could study it. And we sat on the cooler for 5-10 minutes, and the shark is jumping up and down, dying in the cooler. And we're this is so scary. And Chris Schaefer was looking at us I don't know. And I just remember, and I think that it was just, I was so interested. And I remember we talked about the shark for hours afterward, and we learned everything. We met the professor who was studying it. And so I think that experience and just getting to learn in the real world and learn sort of the things as they come up, and you said, these experiences, and as they come up and you address them and you learn from them, and I think that's something I really took away, and it's something that was really a fond memory for me.
Building off that, talking about our Odyssey South in 2019, one memory in particular that really stood out to me, just kind of talk about a real world, I guess, I was with my friends in New Orleans, and that can be kind of a scrappy city, on occasion. But we there were these kids, and they met a street scammer, and just talking to him. He had a bunch of credit cards stuffed in his sock, and then walking around the city, went in this art store. I remember, I'm not exactly sure who my chaperone was, but he was trying to take a bunch of pictures of this art. A store owner comes out, starts yelling at him. He's like, "Hey, you can't do that. That stuff's not for free." And it just really cool experiences like that I really think build a community. Everyone it brings everyone close together, kind of be wow, what the heck was that guy talking about? And just having those experiences as a group really just builds a community. And having that trip at the start of the year, I think was a very unique experience.
A quick add, an academic thing that I think about. About anything Lake Country. I remember being on the Odyssey my first year and reading a packet of just text that otherwise would feel bland, and then getting off the bus and living that, and finding this beautiful balance of what it means to actually engage with the world while also reading up on history. And I just remember everyone feeling super alive and excited about really being able to be in the world in that way. And then secondly, you hear a lot of mischief, right? Which I think is really cool and beautiful, because it taught all of us to push boundaries in a little bit of a way and find those. And I would say also that when I think about the memories at Lake Country, it's about the people. And I'm still dear friends with, a dozen Lake Country classmates, and that's really super special. So the mischief builds great friendships too.
So I'm going to ask a question that's off script because I think it connects to what you're talking about. Can you talk, or would you care to talk a little bit about the relationships you built here, not just with your friends but also with the faculty, and how that impacted your experience? Raven.
Not to make a pattern of starting, I like to talk. The faculty in particular, and the friends as well, without getting into too much detail, when things were tumultuous at home, my family always knew that I had a family here. Coming to this place and having the relationships with my teachers, it was never an authoritarian thing. It truly felt like a family. And so coming here and having people who deeply cared about me and who knew me was incredibly important in giving me a sense of stability in my childhood that may otherwise, I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have that sense of stability. And it's the kind of place where every time I come back here I cry. Every time I see those teachers, it's instant tears. Because it's such an emotional, beautiful place to be, and the relationships that I built with the faculty here will stick with me forever. And the friends are cool.
Yeah, I think for me, so I started at Lake Country in '94. Elizabeth was my teacher. Before you were a guide.
I was practicing.
You were a practicing guide. So I've known Elizabeth for 30 years. But so '94, and then my brother is 9 years younger than me. He graduated in 2014 with Ben. So my family was at the school for 20 years, and so my entire family dynamic is connected to Lake Country. And the way that my family interacts with each other really is influenced by Lake Country, too. And the way my brother and I interact with each other is, yeah. I guess that doesn't exactly answer your question, but yeah, it's permeated completely into our family, and the way that our parents raised us was influenced by Montessori method, influenced by what they were learning from teachers. Being able to allow me to have things at home, that I was able to do at school, like trust in children and respect of children as people, which, and they're great people. They probably would have done that anyway, but I think because there's stuff like this too, where there's parent education, my parents were able to learn more about the Montessori method and bring that into our house too. So.
Adding on to that, I've been thinking about this a lot lately in relation to my personal life at school and what it means when adults listen to you and believe in you, especially at a younger age. And I think that that's something that has been more difficult for me at this point in my life, is I'm in college and getting your professors to believe in you as a student and see your potential or whatever seems like some sort of challenge. But at Lake Country, I really felt listened to and acknowledged in a really specific way. In 7th grade, I had like needs and demands that I made clear, and I had like interests and passions and desires, and Chris Schaefer is like one of those people who listened to me and helped them come to life, I guess, if that makes sense. Like when I was in 7th grade, the Parkland shooting happened, and I was really concerned about like gun control, and I wanted to go to the Minnesota State Capitol, and I wanted to talk to the people there, and I wanted to like have these conversations with students in junior high, but also like I wanted to learn more about policy in general. And I told Chris, and I was like, I really want to do this, and she was like, well, why don't you just make a club? And then we made a club, and then we went to go talk to people at Minnesota State Congress, and it just like happened, you know? Like, I didn't have to convince any adult. It was just like, yeah, I'm listening to you. That can happen. And I think that was really good for like my inner self at that age, and it made me feel like I could just do things that I wanted, I guess.
Yeah, no, I
that
get
makes sense.
Yeah.
I think relationship to people was important here, but also relationship to land, more than other non-human beings, even like objects. That was respect. There's like the respect you, your peers, your surroundings. All those are really instilled and then also practiced. I think the land school is a recurring theme for me and many of us. Going out there definitely informed my relationship with the land, and I got to interact with the land. Growing up in the city, it's not always present, but going out there, you were very present with it. That's really influenced how I think now and my interests, how I go about my daily life, and that sometimes isn't always the first thing I think about, because you have to pay rent and go to work and all that, but I always want to keep that in the back of my head. And last winter I was working with some young athletes, coaching them, and they were not Montessori kids, and I didn't see that, and I did have to sit down and have a stern talking with them and say, you got to respect each other, you got to respect your environment, and yet I think I didn't want to yell at them. I just want to say that these are important, and if other adults are not going to say this, I want to take something that I learned from Lake Country and try and impart it in some way that respect and relationship is important across the table, not just with people, but with everything around you.
Yeah, I think to build on that, I think I had Miss Rash in Children's House, and then I was in junior high, and I think sort of what you were saying, like that mutualism, like there's like everyone's in the decisions, like Yvonne was saying, like you're sort of just like your teachers are with you and they support you and they believe in you, and with that comes your responsibility to then do something with that and act on that and be responsible to your community and clean up, and like when it's hard, you got to sit there and you got to listen to it and you got to talk it out, and if you got to sleep inside a museum, like that's just what you're gonna have to do. And so I think that that's something I take with me into my life now, is just like in every relationship, like there's responsibility. And I think that's something that I really found here, in just finding that your teachers give it to you and they give you trust and they give you a belief, and you then have to do that and you have to reciprocate and you have to, do your part with that. And so I think that's sort of what I learned from my relationships here.
Similar to what Solenne and Caroline have kind of said, I think one of the most unique and important aspects of Lake Country and the relationship between the students and teachers was kind of a very strong mutual trust. I mean, when I was in junior high, we were trusted to leave campus for lunch. Just at 12 years old, just walk out the door, here's we'll write you a pass, you can go wherever. And then at the land school, or even on Odyssey, bringing a bunch of young teenagers across the country. I mean, describing that to anyone else, like outside of Lake Country, they think that is just absolutely crazy. Like when I talk to my family members, they're like, you were 12 years old? Like, I mean, you didn't have a phone at that time. Like it's just unbelievable. And then there are also like really close relationships I had with my teachers, not even like specifically my core teachers, but like the physical education teacher, Gio. I remember one day, he was like, oh, like I need like some guys to help like set up a soccer net with me, and he knew me and another student like really liked to play soccer. So he's like, oh, like why don't you guys just like come outside? So he pulled us out of class. And I think really like cool and unique experiences like that you just won't really find anywhere else. Like teachers and students, you can have like great relationships, but there's a certain trust and like kind relationship at Lake Country that is truly unique to anywhere else.
In the spirit of the name of this, Life After LCS, there's nothing conditional or transactional about any relationship that happens here, and it doesn't end. I'll speak mostly to the staff here, because I'd say a lot of my most impactful memories here have come retroactively. You know, I'm a classic lost puppy that took a long time to really rev up, and I'm not saying this because you're here, but you know, Sarah has been a fulcrum point in like me really turning the page. Yeah, and you know, there's nothing wrong with public school, there's nothing wrong with prep school, but like it was, here's some money, here's an education, thank you, bye-bye. And I'm 32 years old and I'm still back in my middle school. I haven't stepped foot within 10 foot of any other school I've ever went to, so like, let that be proof.
I would say too, with that respect, with all the faculty and teachers, like I'm still in relationship with many teachers at Lake Country. It pushed me as I went to high school and college to like expect that from adults, right? To expect that people would want to be my mentor or friend, right? And like meet them, like, how's your family? What's going on? You know, and not just like, great, you're grading my paper and you're never gonna see me again. And that's really valuable of looking back on those, you know, post-Lake Country experiences, having like robust mentors from here and beyond, because that was really instilled here. I would also say in Raven and I's class, this is a sad thing, but we've lost several classmates, and we were able to gather at the land school, and people traveled from all over the country to celebrate the lives of our classmates, and that I think is really special. Not everyone experiences that, and to welcome family and to like be in a place where we all like built our friendships. I think like I don't hear anyone else being able to do that. So what a privilege it is to be a part of this community.
Hard to follow that. Can you talk a little bit about your transitions to high school and beyond, and how, I mean, some of you have touched on that already, relationship building, and how you, Solenne, you said you were prepared for college before you went to college, but if you could talk a little bit about what that transition was like. I know often families are like, well, what do they do after Lake Country? How's that going to go for them? So any
I can
thoughts?
start.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will start this off by saying I'm a firm believer in public schools too. I love public schools. My daughter goes to Bancroft Elementary. I substitute taught in a public school, but I also love Lake Country. So, but my transition, I went to South High School, and I both had a very hard transition and a very easy transition. And maybe I'll start with the easy one, because I had the skills to be able to, what I learned at Lake Country was like the being able to go and just do things myself and be confident in being able to just go and do things myself. And that was like just the norm. No one had to force me to do something. I was just like, oh, okay, I want to do this, I'll go do this, right? And part of that is the trust, which I have been thinking about a lot and other people have touched on. So I was well equipped to handle an environment that was very, very different from Lake Country. The harder part for me was that there was no trust. I went, and like you just said, I went from a place where I was fully trusted. I was given trust, and then was able to give that trust back to the adults in my life. I was treated as not just a child, I was treated as a person. And what we were basically told was, you are good, and you will do good things. And if sometimes you don't, we can deal with that together, right? It was not punitive. When, like, I don't want to say there's no, it's not leniency, it's accountability, you know, and then I went to high school, and it was like the opposite. Like, the assumption was, you kids are bad, you are on the verge of doing something bad at any point in time, and the only thing stopping you from doing that is the control that we have to have over you. Like, the complete control. And that was so hard for me, and I really kind of lashed out a little bit at some teachers that I felt were really, which I now, having taught in school, I'm like, oh my God, how did I do that? but it just, the sense of like justice around that for me, seeing the way that people are treated was so frustrating. And yeah, so that's what was hard for me. But at the same time, I was prepared, because I feel like, just the fact that I could see that there was something wrong with what was going on. And we'll talk later about like formative experiences for me. Like, that was a formative experience to what I do now as a union organizer, seeing that something's wrong and unjust because there is not a true respect to other people. I think that's such an important thing. And then I also think about, like, attached to this, and this is a little bit of a side note, but I knew I did want to touch on this at one point. But like, Maria Montessori was an anti-fascist. She had to flee Italy in World War II from Mussolini. And really thinking about at the core of what that is, well, one, she developed a Montessori method for poor children of working class families in an Italian ghetto who had disabilities, like people who were forgotten and, you know, put down by so many things. She created this for. But also, like, at the core, it's about treating children as human beings and trust, and not controlling them and allowing them to bloom themselves. And that, like, when thinking about her having to flee, like, that is so counterintuitive to, like, the fascist project, right, of complete control of a population. And the way to get beyond those things that can be so harmful to society in a world that we live in, that we're, like, you know, killing the earth and in this scary place, like, the way at the core to get through that is by teaching our children and treating children as people that are equal to us, that we can guide and be there for, but we're equals. Like, I don't know. Sorry, I rambled a little bit on that, but.
I also totally in support of public schools out of Southwest. And I had, you know, a high school experience there that was valuable in its own way. Apart from Lake Country, I learned a lot going there. One story I kind of like to share that I think gives a good example is in my freshman human geography class. One of the, fall semester, one of the first classroom experiences I had, we went around the classroom at the beginning of the school year, and the teacher said, this teacher also went on to be one of my favorite teachers. He was a very good teacher. He said, what is your goal for this class, or for this year in this classroom? And most of the students went around and said, I want to get an A. I want to, get a good grade. I want to be able to get into college from taking this class, something along those lines. And I, as far as I remember, was one of the only students that said, I want to learn. And I did learn a lot in high school, but it was much more goal-oriented and driven by grades. And it took some work to get out of that mindset again in college, where there were grades, but it wasn't I really tried not to focus on that. And I think in high school, you can get bogged down by that so easily. And I got caught up in it, for sure. But that was a very surprising thing for me, even as, 14-year-old in public high school, a lot of intimidating things, you know, wasn't very big, and there were guys with full-on beards there, and I thought they were like 25, but they were probably 15. So there were a lot of intimidating things about going from a small school to a big school. From, you know, I had some classmates that transitioned with me there, probably one of the bigger groups of students that go on to another high school. But a lot of people, they'd known each other since kindergarten, and they had incoming classes of, you know, 100 people or 50 plus. I had 8 other people, something like that, and that's big for going from Lake Country to another school. So there is a transition. I think, you know, it was important for me to like hold on to the values that I had from Lake Country, carry them through high school, and I think that they are beneficial in a public high school. But you know, hold on, keep track of those, and then also take in and learn what it's like to be in a public school that you don't necessarily get from being in a smaller school. Getting to interact with people that I normally wouldn't, being in a small school, and meeting a lot of new people, and hearing about lots of different experiences that you don't hear at a small private school. So yeah, transition, but hold on to it, and yeah, it is equally beneficial in its own way.
Much to what everyone else is saying, my biggest difficulty in transitioning with it, which I think every graduate of Lake Country is going to experience, but it's an okay experience, is getting to high school and being like, oh, I'm not special. You don't think I rule the world, which is so hard when you're 14 and you've spent all these years being nurtured and cared for and cared about and listened to by people who are your family, and then you get to high school and it is this very like, okay, whatever, go away. And that's not the public school system, or that's not the teachers, your educators' fault. But that is definitely transitioning and learning how to, A, accept that, and then B, not accept that. So at first accept it, and then B, say, well, actually, no, I do have an idea, and I do have something important to say, and knowing when and how to do that and advocate for yourself in a way where there is not necessarily a space carved out for you, because there are spaces carved out for everybody in Lake Country, which is an incredible way to grow up, and that's just like not how my experience has been since leaving Lake Country, and so you have to figure that out, and I had all the skills to do that. And the second thing that was a really difficult transition was going to, I went to Southwest, so public school, bells, and 8 classes, and like going from class to class and feeling like livestock being like herded through halls and being like, you have a lunch from this time to this time, and being in a building with locked doors and being like, I can't get out. It was literally and mentally very claustrophobic. Feeling like, I don't get it. My butt is in a chair all day long. The only reprieve I have is gym, and that was terrible. It was not fun gym like we had fun gym here. It was always indoors. And realizing very quickly, being hit with this wave, because when you graduate Lake Country, maybe I'm speaking for myself here, but there's sort of this sense of like, I'm like too cool for Lake Country. You're not. Lake Country is the best place ever. But like you get here, I mean, I only went to Lake Country, so I was Children's House through junior high, and so like by the time I was done with it, I was like, man, this is so weird. And then I got to freshman year of high school and was like, actually, that was incredible, and I want to go back really badly. And feeling confused about how to like still move and still literally put my hands in dirt. Like the fact that we touch dirt here all the time and we're constantly planting things and we're doing experiments and we're having this like free time, it's just, that was like a whole new wave of, oh my gosh, what is time and time management like? And it, yeah, that was a rude awakening.
Yeah, building on what you were saying with the bell, I was shocked when I heard the bell my first day. I was like, I thought High School Musical made this up. This is not real. What are we doing? But I remember sort of building, like what you were saying, I think there's also, like once you get over that like first adjustment period, like, oh my god, bells are real, like I gotta keep moving, there's no just like, what do I want to do? Like, you gotta go to math. But I think I really took that like fearlessness from Lake Country, and that just like you were saying, like carving out a space for yourself, and not in like a really like demanding way, but just like knowing who you are and going into new places and meeting new people and just like knowing that you have the skills and the ability to contend with that and to be who you want to be in those situations. Like when I got to high school, like yes, there was a little bit of an adjustment, but I also like I joined stuff and I joined the speech team and I joined all these clubs and I signed up for things and I played sports, and I think all of that was just like country doesn't teach you to be afraid in the way that I think a lot of other schools do. And that, like, yes, there are things that are hard, but there's a trust here, and I think we've all been saying this, there's a trust that you can deal with those things, and you're ready for those things, and that you're ready for the world. And I think that beginning from like a very young age, like planting stuff in the ground, there's just this trust that like you're gonna figure it out. And I think that's something that I really took. And I think that made my transition easier than a lot of people's, especially coming out of COVID. Like I think a lot of people were really scared to go into new places, and there was some of that, but there's also this belief that like you're ready for it, and I think that's something I took into high school.
I think my transition was slightly different. I went to Burroughs, which was public elementary school, through 3rd grade before I transferred to Lake Country. And so from 8th grade to high school, I was actually really excited for that, like, reconnect with some of my old friends. But also, I think that Lake Country prepares you very well. You have all these like kind of like scary experiences, like the Odyssey, right away, and then like there's obviously a ramp up in course rigor when you go to the junior high. And I think that just prepares you very well for high school. You're like, all right, well, if I can do that, I can do anything, And then also to kind of touch on like an academic aspect of it, I think that in the junior high, the teachers had high expectations of me. So then going into high school, I had high expectations for myself.
I agree.
Can I just say something on
yeah,
that? Like, in terms of the high expectations, high expectations, absolutely. That then translated to high expectations for myself. But it never felt like a punishing way of having high expectations for us. It was like we see who you can be, and we know that you can do that. Not a like, you have to get this done, otherwise you're in trouble sort of thing. I don't know. Do you feel that way too? Okay, yeah.
So, are there, okay, I have 2 other questions. I'll start with this one. Is there any connection between your time at Lake Country and the field or work that you're doing now, or that you might be considering?
I just talked, so I have something to say, but other people should talk first.
You brought up that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it kind of before, but I studied biology in college. I think connection to the land, spending time out at the land school, and also here in an urban setting. I did actually, I worked at the land school, so I may have worked with some of your kids two summers ago. And I would like to do more of something like that. I actually talked to Lucia this fall, got connected through one of our alum parents, and that's also something, having a network that you can come back to, trust, as a mom of one of my friends, and I knew that if I reached out to her, she'd totally be interested in talking. But yeah, I think having that connection to the land, I want to come back to that and try and engage more like I did at Lake Country or my time at the land school, and bring that into a professional setting.
I think at Lake Country you are taught to be a steward. So a steward of community and a steward of the land. And I studied human geography, and people are always like, why would you do that? What does that even mean? But like how people relate to place, right? And how we make place, and ended up doing like rural harm reduction organizing, supporting communities and what their needs were and getting them the resources they need. And what you were talking about, like justice, right? Like how do we support people in having autonomy, and then moving from that into like land-based work. Like what does it mean to build a resilient future? What does it mean to have real robust community? What does it mean to ensure people have access to land who have been historically marginalized and displaced? And I think that those are all things that like all of us learned through being at Lake Country to be good stewards of community and land. So that's very much a part of my career journey.
Well, I can't say that email marketing is really related to Lake Country. Curiosity is. Being curious is. That's all I'll say. And that I got from Lake Country.
I always think this is like really interesting, but there were certain things we learned in junior high that my other friends did not learn about, like woodworking. And two of the classes that really stood out to me in junior high were philosophy and Latin, and we did them like once a semester, so it was like one semester of philosophy, one semester of Latin, and for some reason both of those classes really stuck with me. And when I was enrolling in my first classes, my first semester of college, the first two classes I put in my shopping cart were philosophy and Latin. And it was almost like there was something, I had developed an interest in philosophy like from Lake Country and from talking to Chris Schaefer about philosophy and like humanities. And it was like in the back of my head for 4 years of high school where I didn't really get the opportunity to like learn about any of that stuff. There was no Latin at Southwest High School. And then like as soon as I got to college, like those were the classes I wanted to take. It was like I want to revisit this from over 4 years ago, or like around 4 years ago, because I know this was important and interesting to me in like this really formative time, and it's been in the back of my head. And the other thing is, other people were talking about, like, well, I'm still in school, so I don't have a, I have little jobs, but I don't have like a career yet. But a lot of people were talking about how important the land is to what they're doing now in their lives. And one of the first things I did when I went to college was I wanted to find out if there was a community farm that I could help with. So I started like emailing like different clubs. I was like, do you know, like, do students, is there any sort of like farming club or like agriculture? I was just like asking for anything. And I did find a community garden that was really great. And it was like, they'd make soups for the community, and I helped with harvesting, and it was really wonderful. And then unfortunately I also saw the loss of that place. I think the school bought it from them, so that was really disappointing. But like going to college, like that was the first thing that I wanted to do. And now I'm studying history and philosophy of science, and I think it's really interesting to think about like what I'm reading and thinking and writing about in school. Like, I don't know, I'm thinking a lot about like social relations that mediate our interactions with land a lot of the time. And I think about that, a lot of that ties back to my connection with the land at Lake Country, I guess.
I think for me, it kind of like I tell my boyfriend all the time, I don't have any kids yet, but I'm like, if we have kids, I feel like Lake Country was like the core, you know what I mean? Like that, like preschool to 8th grade, it's like that, like is like where you, if it's done right, like get like who you are. And so I feel like it's like we could just do it for those years. We'll do Montessori, and then like I feel like we'll be okay after that. If you like do it for that long, you're good, and then you can kind of go and do anything. And I feel like it just pops up at the randomest times. Like I'll like even in like my vocabulary, I'll be talking to people and like say something about beekeeping or about just some weird ass words. Like, what are you talking about? And it's like yeah, I did that in school. Like I was a kid and I was like talking about all these things. I told my boyfriend we had an ethics class in 7th grade, and he was like, God, I wish like somebody was talking to me about ethics when I was in 7th grade. He was like, it was nothing that I was doing. I got my software job because I spoke French really well, just because I was here and learning it from when I was 2 all the way through 8th grade, and it just was something that they were looking for, and it just kind of worked out. And then I went to New York and felt comfortable doing that. I feel like it kind of just is a part of who I am and like how I make choices and how I'm open to anything. I feel like that came from being here. Like the people that I meet are always kind of just like, you've had this like very, like people call it weird, and maybe it is weird and I'm fine with that, but I feel like people are just like, you had like a weird schooling thing going on. And I'm like, yeah, I did, it was awesome, yeah, but it's definitely different.
My brother and I, he was here for 2 or 3 years, I can't remember, but he left before completing the program, and I was here for 4 years, and I got through somehow. I got all the way through 8th grade, but that's more to my own merit. I mean, we're two different sides of two completely opposite coins, and he's, you know, been siloed into a career based on his aptitude towards, you know, his academic achievements, and that's great. But he's so rigid, and everything has to be a certain way, and I love him dearly, but he's so miserable in that. To speak to the question of did, you know, anything I learned here translate exactly to what I'm doing now? And yes and no. What it did is it gave me lateral movement, and I'm sure many of us have all had to reinvent ourselves. And, you know, I first started playing intramural sports here, and that's when I first got it in my head that I could be Kobe Bryant. And hey, you know what? I got to go over to Denmark and I got to play semi-pro basketball, so you know what? I got part of the way there. But then I got back and I was like, I'm 6 feet tall and I'm 180 pounds, and there was only 450 players in that league. Probably not going to be one of them. Time to reinvent myself. 19 years old today on my couch. I was exposed. I was exposed to things. I wasn't given the option. I was exposed to things, so I had a pool to draw on. I did theater. Let's try it. Cool. I went to school for theater. I did some really beautiful shows here in the city at, you know, reputable theaters. Eventually that love wore down because it'll grind it out of you. Time to reinvent myself. I've spent the last 15 years in hospitality because I had to get a job in restaurants because I was doing theater, because that's what you do. And hospitality saved my life in a lot of ways. And the point of it all is that, did I learn something academic here that translates to what I do? No. I mean, yes, but there's not a direct through line. But at the end of the day, it gave me agility, it gave me the confidence to know that things are gonna get weird, and you're resourceful, you're always gonna figure it out, because that is the world we live in. You don't just, there's not a straight line to the finish line. You gotta zig and you gotta zag.
I think we're going to quickly, and then we'll open it up if people have some questions to end. Yeah.
I was just going to say that while I was working at the land school, I got to work with some kids, and this came up while other people were talking in my memory. I think something that Lake Country does is appreciates and props up the wisdom that even very young kids have. I've got to spend time with, you know, out at the land school, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. Since then, through some coaching I've done and other things, some of the most interesting, observational, intellectual conversations I've had in the last few years have been with 6 and 7-year-olds. And I think that Lake Country supports that in a way that not every school does. And it's not just, oh, those kids are not fully developed yet, they don't know what they're talking about. It's like, let them explore that, and you know, I can see, you know, what the teachers get from being with kids every day. I'm sure that it's not easy every day being with 6 and 7-year-olds, but there's so much wisdom that they hold that I think as we age, we lose their ability to perceive and see the world in a different way is really beautiful, and I think any way that we can hold on to that and support kids in their curiosity is really beautiful.
Does anyone have questions for our panelists? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us here, the time. Question regarding other aspects of the Montessori environment that kind of give you an advantage besides adaptability, of course, going into high school, college, or the real work, environment?
Yeah, I was gonna say this on the last one too, but I think I really remember from junior high, the Chris Schaefer's summit project, which was like a model UN thing, and you picked a country and you studied it and you wrote down all this information, then you had to like engage in a discussion like with all the other countries, and you had to reach some sort of agreement. And I remember like I just fell in love with this project, and I was so into it, and I had like pages and pages and pages and pages of research, and I was so excited for the conversation. And like so many of my other peers were like equally excited, and it was just really good discussion, and everyone represented their country, and there was like negotiations for what this agreement should be. And I think that's like the sort of like rigor of conversation and the rigor of negotiation and discussion and debate is something that I've carried into high school, and that ability to talk with people who you don't agree with or who think differently from you, and then to come to a common ground or to see where they're coming from and then learn from that is something that I really valued. And I think that's something that's really applicable like every day in high school. Like you're going to meet someone who's thinking differently, you're going to have to work with someone, or you're going to have to learn something new. And I think that like willingness and ability to have a conversation and to do it well and to do it with the like with a purpose and trying to learn something is something that I've found is like really applicable and really concrete in my life.
I think the integration of like creativity is a really big deal. Like being like in school, willing and able to, present your work in a beautiful way is like a through line even to now if I'm writing like boring grants or whatever it is, that it can be creative and beautiful. And I would also say, what is it? Meeting, the circle.
Oh, community meeting.
Community meeting. How to facilitate a meeting. That's a really big deal. How to work through conflict with your peers. How to like hold a space of many people who maybe don't know each other or get along, and be able to like step in and say, okay, like I know how to do this. I'm in seventh grade. Like we're doing it all over again. So those are like really tangible pieces, but I think about them often now in my life.
Two things that come to mind. You'll be able to answer this. What's that thing that we do in E2 at the end of, I think, our last year, when we write like
The cosmic
cosmic
autobiography.
autobiography. Oh my gosh, my mom talks about that all the time. I gotta get my hands on it because apparently it was so cool. I remember bits and pieces of it. That, if any of you have kids who are in E2 or going to be in E2, that is, you're gonna love it. It's awesome. I don't remember it, but I remember things about it. I remember it being super hard. I remember it being the most challenging thing that I had ever done academically at that time, and the things that I learned about myself, the teachers learned about me, my family learned about me through that activity was like, took that with me, even though I'm saying I don't remember it, I remember it in my core. But learning how to write really big projects like that and write something and be challenged, and that was one of the first really prescriptive things that we were assigned, and I'm remembering, where it was like, you have to write this chapter in this way, this chapter has to be about this in this way. Like, you could do it creatively, but it was prescriptive, and that, I use that in my job every day. And then the other thing is more abstract, which is just problem solving. I can't tell you how many people my age, and I work with kids, who have no idea how to problem solve because they didn't have a school where somebody said, well, why don't you just mess around with it and see what you can figure out, like the ability to take something apart or try to put it back together, or the ability to build a desk. Like, that's, like, we know how to do those things. And so maybe that's not applicable to my job. I don't build desks at my job, but at my home it's certainly very useful to be able to handle power tools and an instruction manual or not. But just, yeah, that problem solving of like, well, I can't do this, but how can I change the way that I'm approaching it and see it from a different angle to figure out how to get it done.
One thing I like to say that I think Lake Country really helped me with, and that I seem to have kind of an edge on my peers with, is just being a good consumer of information. I think especially humanities classes, like for example, social studies with Chris, we were critical of current events in our world, and we would have, like civil discourse on these events, and we were just in like 7th and 8th grade at the time. But I think that really helped me view the world with a critical lens, and I think still today it really helps me with research papers, or just like, I guess like, I don't know, looking at the news and like being a good consumer of information, knowing like what's a reliable source. And I think that's a very important thing to be able to carry with you in the world.
I was gonna say that I think that Lake Country really complicated the supposed binary between like work and play for me. And someone else was saying this earlier in the conversation, but like we were talking about how like relationships take work, and I think that's something that like came from Lake Country, is that like work is play and play requires work, and it's all like more complicated than it seems. And I think I sort of integrate that into my friendships and like my relationships today, is like, you know, it's not just going to be easy and fun, like it's going to require problem solving and like actual labor being put into maintaining a relationship. And there was someone else said something about how like respect is work, which I think I hold with me from Lake Country.
I'm surprised we haven't talked more about the theater. Like, I feel like all of the plays that we did, like, that translates into, like, every day. Like, you go to, I feel like high school, I didn't talk about my transition, but, like, the academic part of high school felt easy. Like, the challenge was, like, the structure is very different, but, like, the things that we were learning felt, like, for at least personally, easy to the point that I, like, didn't take them seriously. Like, it was, like, we're having a hard time reading and talking about, like, what we think this author is saying in this book. Like, it felt like we had kind of been there, done that by the point I got to high school. And so I think, like, the public speaking and being comfortable being embarrassed, like, those are all very useful things, especially in high school and college when you're forced into these, like, situations where you, like, feel awkward and you have to get in front of everybody and talk. We all kind of just got tons of experience having to do that. I feel like that's, like, a really big one, is, like, being in the theater, having to speak, saying when you can't sing for crap, like me, like, having to do it anyway, and just kind of, like, just say, well, whatever, I'm doing it, and everyone's gonna see it, and it just is what it is very useful, like, every day. It really is.
Being threatened with the school play being canceled if you don't get it together.
You have to get it together. Yeah.
Sorry, it's just because we were talking about that I didn't bring that up.
Yeah, it's so useful, I feel like, at least for me. Yeah, just being able to speak and not feel, like, I feel like so many kids were, like, frozen in high school. Like, they're like, no, I will not read. I will not, you know what I mean? And it's like, we just did that all the time, so it didn't feel so scary.
In regards to the play, I was one of the most terrifying things. Like, I could do public speaking, and also performing, was one of the scariest things I could imagine. Being, not only in 7th, 8th, I mean, we did plays throughout all of school, but particularly in junior high. And I don't know if I made that known, but in 8th grade, I got to be one of the assistant directors on the play, have a smaller part in the play, which I was happy with. But then, so there was some adapting to, like, what, you know, I didn't want to be front and center, but I wanted to help other people figure that out. And so I was given that opportunity, which I was very grateful for, that I didn't have to sing in front of everyone. So there's some, you know, it's not just forcing. It's like forcing, you still have to do the play, but how can we make this feel slightly more comfortable and not like you're going to have a panic attack on stage?
I think for me, it's the development of an inner drive, like intrinsically wanting to get something done, to do something, rather than having an external force telling me what to do. And we've talked a lot about junior high, but going back to, you know, Children's House, you have that 3-hour window, that 3-hour block of uninterrupted work time, and you decide how to fill it. And if you're going to just sit there and not do anything at all, well, the teacher's probably going to try to guide you to do something else. But, like, you know, you can choose what you want to do. And, like, I would just do reports. Like, all day long, I would just do reports. I love doing reports. So I got to do reports, and I was very driven to do reports. And I would just, it could be so focused on them. Whereas my brother, now he knows he has ADHD and could move around the classroom as much as he needed to and do things all over. He also had Elizabeth, so yeah, he could move around all the time, and so that was also beneficial for him. So we both benefited from Montessori method and from our two different ways of looking at it. But yeah, that from the age 3, and then in the junior high things are a little more, you have more of a schedule, places that you need to go, classes and stuff. But at least specifically through Children's House through E2, you are in charge of your day. So of course you're going to develop an inner drive to decide what you want to do. And that is so important to the work that I do. It was so important in high school. It was so in college. Like that's how you get through college is having that. So yeah.
And the diary that we keep in E2
Oh, the
too,
work-
to
the work diary?
Yep.
to like
The work-
document each day like what you did.
I love
during
my work
lunchtimes.
diaries.
Do you like lists?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I developed that through work diaries.
Okay, yes. And for some people, it's so funny that it was like you would go through the work diary pages and it'd be like 9 a.m. snack and then nothing else. And it's not that we weren't doing things; it's that we weren't writing them down. And I remember being that person who would, you know, have a lot of gaps. And by the time I got through E2, I'd be like, I've got this work diary thing down.
Yeah.
First of all, thanks. I really enjoyed listening to you speak. I'm a tad bit older, and this question may be a little rambling, but I'm really trying to get at something. Based off of being here and your experiences as you move forward, and in a world today, I think young people should own the world today. It's your future, and you should take on as much as you can, and that, you know, how do you see in a world of that's changed so much, you know, with social media, digital technology, politics, the earth itself, and everything that's gone on, it's going forever down that road. And how do you see going to school here informing you to deal with the things that you come up against and things and priorities for you as far as impacting the world versus, I mean, that's so much is in sound bites today. How do you break through that clutter and then begin to make informed decisions and make things happen in your, you know, any way, shape, or form?
Okay, well, in high school, I've been very involved in like politics, and I think that did begin here with Summit and with, you know, like Odysseys and stuff like that. Like I just got very interested in politics, like you were saying, like public policy. So this past fall, I interned for a woman running for Minnesota House, and I think, like, I just reached out to her. Like, I saw her at this event, and I was like, I want to work for you. So I, like, emailed her, and I sent her my resume, and she was like, sure, and she took on an intern, and I think that was something that, like, I saw Lake Country coming through in that. Like, I just saw something, and I was like, this is cool, I'm going to do it. And that, like, sort of, like, engaging, and even if it's sort of, like, counterculture and, like, the sound bites thing you were saying, like, there's a sort of, like, tit for tat type of situation that I think we sometimes fall into, especially with social media, and this really short form, like, just say what you have to say and then never take responsibility for any of the repercussions. And I think that here at Lake Country, like, there were repercussions, and there were, not in a punitive way, but like in a, you're responsible for your impact on the world, and you have a responsibility to make it better, and you have a responsibility to be good to your peers and good to your teachers. And so I think that's something that I've taken with me, and I think that's probably the biggest way that Lake Country impacted me, is just looking at the world and seeing yourself as someone who has the responsibility to do something good and to make a difference, no matter how small that is. And so I think, like, even if it's not always easy or possible, like, it's the sort of the personal responsibility and then the obligation to other people is what I took.
I think at a surface level, like really, really high level, it's easy to look at Montessori as kind of hippy-dippy sometimes, but, you know, here it's, in musing over it, I'm really surprised how much practical application there is baked in everything we do. And I don't even remember what we called it. I think it was like the marketplace, but I know that the Land School has been a really big proponent of this, of like, hey, well, I'm not speaking for them here right now, but like, fact of the matter is, like, we live in a capitalist society, and there's a supply chain, and we get to see the supply chain unfold in front of us at the school. They grow things out of the ground. The kids put things in the ground, they grow out of the ground, they make things with them, and then they sell them to you, and they find a compelling reason why you need to buy that thing. And we're all a part of that in our adult lives in some way, shape, or form. And that's just like a microcosmic example, but it's not just rainbows and butterflies here. It's like, how are we, like, getting by day to day as well? It's a little bit of everything.
I think also a big part of my experience at Lake Country was Raven, you were speaking to this of like problem solving, but also being able to sit with really like what we would call like wicked problems, right? And like really have robust conversations. I remember in junior high, like we had a whole, like several weeks, maybe it wasn't several weeks or a couple of classes, but talking about like Gaza and Israel. I learned about that when I was in 7th grade. We were having robust conversations about what does land mean, and what is the history here, and like how do we engage in dialogue that is going to be hard. And we're all sitting here, right, like able to have probably those conversations still. And I think that that's really incredible. And my niece goes here now, she's 9. And I'm able to engage in that dialogue with her, and she's able to talk about her experience and articulate it in a way that I think comes from being in an environment like this that gives me a lot of hope. Because I know we're facing a lot of big challenges, but these kiddos coming out of here, we're going to have a beautiful future, I hope.
I want to almost gently push back on the question, though, which is that I think every generation looks at the next generation and goes, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? These kids are, whatever it is, whether it's, you know, the invention of cars and like, oh, these kids don't ride horses like they used to, or whether it's the invention of the radio and those kids are always listening to the dang radio. I think it's always something that makes it right now feel like the end of the world because it's so different from when you or I were growing up and things are changing rapidly. That's not to say that things haven't kind of hit the fan. Like I feel that, and it weighs me down, and that's something that I grappled with as an adult, was this sense of existential dread of like, oh my gosh, what do? I can't do anything. I'm sitting here with my reusable straw, and oh my gosh, it's just not helping. And I have my reusable bag at the co-op, and it's just not enough. And so I think that for me personally, like reframing the question of like, okay, this is not, and maybe Lake Country taught me this, which is that like if you can think globally, but if you act locally, that's where you can do something. And so I think these kids were all really uniquely prepared to do something here in Minneapolis or whatever city we live in. We're prepared to do something small and think about the big picture and be horrified by what's happening in other countries and be horrified what's happening on a level that we feel like we can't impact, but we do it. If there's enough Lake Country kids in every community, everywhere, doing something in that community, then eventually it becomes a better world, or a different, improved world.
I think, like Lucia was saying, the hard conversations that I don't particularly feel intimidated by having now as an adult or in college, that I know some people have told me to stray away from, or even like in a family, disagreements. I have been told, don't talk politics with your grandma because it's not gonna get where you want it to. I not listen to that at all. I've had many political conversations with her. I think we agree much more than we disagree. And I've never come away in an argument like yelling at my grandma. She's my grandma, I love her. And I don't know anyone else who has sat down and had that conversation with her. And yeah, we don't agree on everything. But at the end of the day, we come away with mutual respect and love for each other. And it's not intimidating. And I think that you learn that here as well. It's not a hate-filled argument that you're having. It's respectful discussion and discourse. You can disagree, but you come away with respect. And I don't know if there's enough of that. I think we don't want to have those conversations often.
I think it may be time.
We gotta wrap up. And kind of in Lake Country fashion, I just wanted to maybe have a couple minutes in closing. These young folks have given quite a lot and shared quite a lot with us. And so one of the things we have a practice of is sharing appreciations, right? And so when a meal is served at the land school, we take time to say thanks for what we appreciated about that meal. We've taken in quite a meal tonight, and I just want to open up the floor for those of you in the audience. It can be a simple one word sharing back and a sharing of appreciation. It could be a full sentence, but if you want to share back with these folks, these alum, something you appreciated about tonight, it would be great.
I want to appreciate you, Adam. We moved here 7 years ago. I also work in the hospitality industry. not great at public speaking. And you were one of the first people to show me kindness and honesty that I could just feel. And I've never told you that, and you're a big part of the reason why we're at this school. And there's not enough thanks in me for you sharing your experience here, for all of you, but I'll just never forget how you made me feel when I moved here and I knew like 3 people. So thank you.
I want to say thank you to all of you for all that you've shared, and I have 2 girls that are in junior high, 8th grade, and they've been here since they were 3, and we're working on that step of where do they go next and what do they do next, and hearing all of you has made me feel really great about what they will do, what they can't do, and that they're going to be okay no matter what they do. So thank you for that.
I want to thank all of you for your openness. Obviously, you've been very curious a lot in your life and your time here. The fact that you all have a pleasure to listen to and have shared a lot of depth about who you are and where you see things able to take you, like being at Lake Country and moving forward. And I think it was a pleasure just listening to you. And thanks a lot for informing me.
I'd like to thank you for sharing today too. My kids are here because of some alums like you that shared their story, not in this kind of setting, but kind of when I was in grad school, I knew someone who was an alum. It was just like, wow, you're an amazing person, an amazing human, and I got to know more about where they went to school and kind of their life, and that's why my kids are here now. So keep sharing because it actually means a lot.
Yeah, just add, if I was in your chair tonight, I probably would have had notes with me and prepared myself. And I think everything that's been said felt really authentic tonight. That you all are just thinking and reacting and sharing that. And I think that that way of kind of bringing yourself to this group is great and really helpful as a parent of a 6th grader who's just really trying to imagine what the next year is look like for him. So thank you for that.
I was just say that something that's helpful to me is that I see, like, even though, there's like 2 decades between some of you, like, there's like this uniform level of like respect for each other and for the audience, for yourselves, and like that same like thread of curiosity of being able to survive, being able to figure things out. Like it seems like it's something that everybody gets. It's not like, oh, this one group survived this crazy thing at camp or whatever. Like, I mean, you do kind of have that, like, all got through, like, a shipwreck together kind of feel, but, like, it's like that without the danger. Like, you guys survived a thing, but it was okay because you were safe doing it. Yeah. And, like, I guess that would also explain why you guys seem really tied together, too, because you all made it through, and now you're able to exist because of that. So.
Yeah, and I will just say, on behalf of Lake Country School, thank you very much. I am leaving here definitely inspired, uplifted, energized, and very proud.